I was sitting in my room doing a tarot reading for a client, something I had done thousands of times over 25 years, when suddenly the cards went ice cold in my hands. And I do not mean cold like the room temperature dropped. I mean a supernatural cold that shot through my fingers and up my arms like death itself was touching me. The temperature in that room must have dropped 30 degrees in an instant. I could see my breath forming in the air. And then I saw it. Standing behind my client was this thing, this entity that I had been communicating with for over 2 decades. And for the first time I saw its true face. It was not a spirit guide. It was not an ascended master. It was not my higher self. What I saw was something twisted and ancient and full of pure hatred. It made me drop those cards and run out of my own house screaming into the night. And what happened next completely shattered everything I believed for 25 years and led me to the one person I never thought I would follow. Let me take you back to where this all started. I grew up in a home where spirituality was everywhere, but it was not Christian spirituality. My mother was deeply involved in New Age practices. We had crystals in every room of our house. She would read our auras at the breakfast table. Tarot cards were just a normal part of life, like reading the newspaper. I remember being maybe 7 or 8 years old and my mother letting me hold her tarot deck for the first time. The cards felt electric in my small hands. She told me that these cards held ancient wisdom, that they could connect us to the spirit realm and show us things that our physical eyes could not see. And I believed her completely. Why would I not believe my own mother? My father was not in the picture. He left when I was 4, and I have almost no memories of him. My mother always said that his departure was meant to be, that the universe had other plans for our family. Looking back now, I can see how that abandonment created a void in me, a desperate need to find meaning and connection somewhere. And my mother handed me the tools she thought would help me find it. By the time I was 12, I had my own tarot deck. I saved up my allowance for months to buy a Rider-Waite deck from a metaphysical shop downtown. I memorized every card meaning. I practiced spreads until I could do them in my sleep. By 15, I was doing readings for my friends at school during lunch breaks. Girls would slip me $5 to tell them if their crush liked them back, or if they would pass their exams. And here is the thing that nobody tells you about this world. It works. The readings were accurate. I would tell people things about their lives that I had no natural way of knowing. I would predict things that would actually happen weeks or months later, and every time something came true, it pulled me deeper and deeper into this world, because I thought I had found real power, real truth, real spiritual connection. But even then, even as a teenager seeing these supernatural things happen through me, there was this emptiness inside of me that I could not explain. I had the gifts, I had the abilities, I had people coming to me for guidance and looking at me with awe in their eyes. But late at night, when I was alone in my bedroom, I would feel this void, this hollow, aching feeling in my chest, like something essential was missing from my life. I thought maybe I just needed to go deeper. Maybe I needed more knowledge, more power, more connection to the spirit realm. So that is exactly what I did. After high school, I did not go to a traditional college. Instead, I traveled to places like Sedona, New Orleans, and Salem. I studied under different spiritual teachers. I learned about Wicca and ceremonial magic. I studied different divination systems beyond tarot, runes, pendulums, scrying mirrors. I got initiated into covens where we performed rituals under full moons. I called upon spirits and entities that I believed were there to help me evolve into my highest self. And the whole time, through all of it, that emptiness just kept growing larger and darker inside of me. Let me tell you what they do not put in the books about witchcraft and tarot. They do not tell you about the nightmares that start after a few years of practice. I am talking vivid, horrifying nightmares that feel more real than waking life. Dreams of being chased by shadows, of falling into bottomless pits, of seeing faces in the darkness that would follow me into my waking hours. They do not tell you about waking up at 3 in the morning, that witching hour, feeling like something heavy is sitting on your chest and you cannot breathe, no matter how hard you try. They do not tell you about the sleep paralysis, where you are fully conscious but cannot move your body while something dark stands in the corner of your room watching you. They do not tell you about the way your relationships start to fall apart. My friendships, from before I got deep into witchcraft, slowly dissolved. I could not relate to normal people anymore. They seemed asleep, unconscious, trapped in the matrix while I had awakened to higher truths. At least, that is what I told myself. The reality was I was becoming isolated, paranoid, unable to trust anyone who was not part of my spiritual community. And they definitely do not tell you about the voices. They start as whispers during meditation, which you interpret as spirit guides communicating with you. Then they start coming outside of meditation. Then they start waking you up at night with instructions, demands, information you did not ask for. By my mid-20s, I could not tell the difference between my own thoughts and the voices of entities that had attached themselves to me. I thought this was enlightenment. I thought this was what being a powerful witch meant. By my late 20s, I was a professional tarot reader with a waiting list of clients stretching months ahead. People would fly in from other states, sometimes other countries, to get readings from me. I was teaching workshops at New Age conferences. I was writing articles for spiritual magazines. I was building what looked, from the outside, like a successful career as a spiritual leader. But inside, I was falling apart in ways I could not admit to anyone. I was taking medication for anxiety that kept getting worse no matter what I did. I was having panic attacks in grocery stores, in my car, in the middle of client sessions that I had to hide. I was drinking too much wine every night just to quiet my mind enough to fall asleep. And that void, that emptiness I felt as a teenager, it had become this gaping black hole inside of me that no amount of spiritual practice, no ritual, no entity could fill. I want to explain something to you about how tarot actually works, because this is what I wish someone had told me when I was that 12-year-old girl buying her first deck. When you do a tarot reading, you are not just shuffling pieces of cardboard with pretty pictures. You're opening yourself up to the spirit realm. You're literally creating an invitation, a doorway for spiritual entities to communicate through you and through those cards. You might as well hang a sign on your soul that says, "Open for business. All spirits welcome." Now, for 25 years, I believed the entities that answered that invitation were benevolent. I called them spirit guides. I called them angels, though I knew nothing about what real angels actually are. I called them ascended masters or ancestors. They had different names, but I believed with all my heart they were there to help humanity evolve. And they were so clever, so patient. They would give me accurate information about 90% of the time. Just enough truth to keep me hooked. Just enough accurate predictions to keep me trusting them. But that other 10%, the information that was wrong, the guidance that led people down harmful paths, I always found ways to explain that away. Maybe I misinterpreted the cards. Maybe the timeline shifted. There was always an excuse. It was not until year 23 of my practice that things started to get really dark. Over the years, I had built up what I thought was a strong relationship with one particular spirit guide. This entity had been with me for over a decade. It had a name. It had a distinct personality. It would communicate with me directly into my mind, giving me guidance about my life, my relationships, my career decisions, and I trusted it completely. Then one night I was doing a protection ritual, something I had done hundreds of times before, casting a circle, calling the elements, invoking protective energies around my home, when suddenly in the middle of this ritual my trusted guide, my companion of over 10 years, revealed something to me that I cannot fully put into words. It showed me a vision. I saw all the people I had read for over the years, thousands of faces stretching back through time, all the people I had guided into New Age spirituality and witchcraft. And in this vision I saw chains, invisible spiritual chains connecting each of these people to something dark, something hidden. And I saw that the same chains were connected to me, wrapped around my soul so tight I had stopped feeling them. And at the end of those chains was not a spirit guide or an ascended master. It was something else entirely. Something that hated me, something that had always hated me. I tried to shake off that vision. I told myself it was just my anxiety. I did cleansing rituals. I smudged my whole house with sage. But after that night, everything accelerated. The nightmares got worse than ever before. I started seeing shadows moving in my peripheral vision during broad daylight. Objects in my house would move on their own. Books would fall off shelves. Candles would light themselves. And that entity that I trusted, my guide of over a decade, its communication started to change. It became more demanding. It would wake me at 2 or 3 in the morning with instructions that made no sense. It became controlling, telling me which clients to see and which to refuse, who I could spend time with. And when I pushed back, when I questioned or refused, it became threatening. It would show me visions of terrible things happening to me. It would send physical sensations of pain through my body. It would whisper that I belonged to it, that I had given myself to it years ago, that there was no way out. I want to pause here and talk about something that I know might be hard for some people to hear, especially if you are someone who uses tarot cards and thinks it is just harmless fun. The spirit behind tarot cards is not neutral. It is not just a psychological tool for self-reflection like some people claim. Every time you pick up those cards and ask them to show you something about your life, you're making a spiritual invitation. You're opening a door, and what comes through that door is not what it pretends to be. I know this because I spent 25 years on the other side of that door. I know this because I built deep relationships with these entities. I know this because I saw behind the mask when they finally let it slip. These spirits present themselves as helpers, as guides, as beings of light and love and wisdom. But their actual goal is not to help you. Their goal is to separate you from the one true source of spiritual power and peace. They want to keep you searching, keep you striving, keep you buying more decks and more crystals, and going deeper into practices that will never fill that void inside you, because they know what will fill it. And they will do anything, deceive you for decades if necessary, to keep you from finding it. That brings me back to that night in my reading room. 25 years of practice, thousands of readings, complete trust in my abilities and my spirit guides, and finally the mask came completely off. My client that evening was a young woman, maybe 25 years old, who reminded me so much of myself at that age. She had been coming to me for about a year, hungry for spiritual guidance, searching for meaning, that same void in her eyes that I had carried my whole life. I shuffled the cards the way I always did, laid them out in my usual Celtic cross spread, and started to interpret. But as I was speaking, the cards went cold, ice cold, in a way that burned my fingers. The temperature in my reading room plummeted so fast that frost started forming on the window, even though it was the middle of summer. I could see my breath. My client looked confused, asking if I had turned on the air conditioning. I looked up, and behind my client I saw my guide standing there, the entity I had trusted for over a decade. But it did not look the way it usually presented itself to me. The mask was completely gone. What I saw was twisted, ancient, full of a hatred so pure and intense that it physically hurt to look at. And it was looking at me with this expression of ownership, like I was a possession, like I was livestock it had been fattening for slaughter. And in that moment I knew with absolute certainty that I had been deceived for 25 years. Every reading, every ritual, every moment I thought I was connecting with something divine. I had been communicating with darkness while it laughed at how easily I was fooled. I screamed. I do not mean I gasped or made a startled noise. I screamed from somewhere deep in my gut, a primal sound of pure terror. I knocked over the table, sending cards flying everywhere. I ran out of my house, leaving my terrified client sitting there not understanding what had just happened. I just ran. I ended up walking for hours in the dark. My mind was shattered. Everything I had built my entire identity around for 25 years had just been revealed as a lie. I was not a powerful witch. I was not spiritually evolved. I was a fool who had been manipulated by darkness since I was a child, and I had led thousands of other people into the same trap. Somehow I eventually ended up outside a church. I do not even know how I got there. I had not been inside a church since I was a small child. Churches were places for sheep, for people too afraid to explore real spirituality. At least that is what I had believed. But something pulled me toward this building, something that felt different from anything I had experienced in 25 years of spiritual practice. Something clean. I sat in my car outside that church for probably 2 hours. People were arriving for an evening service, normal-looking people, families, elderly couples. They looked so peaceful, so unburdened. I watched them through my windshield while tears streamed down my face. Finally, I went inside. I sat in the very back row, trying to be invisible. My mascara was destroyed. The service had already started, and the pastor was preaching about something. I honestly do not remember what, when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. He looked directly at me. In a church full of probably 200 people, he looked right at me in the back row, like I was the only person in the room, and he said, "There is someone here tonight who has been in bondage to spiritual forces they thought were helping them. Someone who has been deceived by the enemy, masquerading as an angel of light. Someone who just discovered that everything they believed was a lie, and they do not know where to turn. God wants you to know that you are not too far gone. He sees you. He has always seen you. He loves you more than you can possibly understand, and He is calling you home tonight." I completely fell apart. I'm talking ugly crying so hard I could not breathe, hyperventilating 25 years of pain and emptiness and deception just pouring out of me in waves. I slid out of the pew onto my knees on the floor. Some women from the church came and surrounded me. They did not ask questions. They did not judge me. They did not look at me with suspicion or fear. They just held me and started praying. That night, I learned who Jesus really is. Not the caricature I had been taught in New Age circles, where he was just one ascended master among many, not just an enlightened teacher whose consciousness we could all achieve, but God Himself in human form, who came specifically to rescue people exactly like me. People who had been searching their whole lives for spiritual truth and had been led down every wrong path imaginable. People who had opened doors they did not know how to close. People who were in chains to forces they did not fully understand. When I gave my life to Jesus that night, something supernatural happened. I felt chains I did not even know I was wearing physically break off of me. I felt darkness that had been wrapped around my soul for decades flee from His presence. And that void, that emptiness I had carried since I was a little girl, looking for her absent father, it was filled with something I can only describe as liquid love and light and peace all at once. For the first time in my entire life, I felt complete. I felt home. I felt clean in a way that no cleansing ritual had ever made me feel. But I want to be honest about what came next. The journey after that night was not easy. When you have been involved in the occult for 25 years, you do not just walk away clean. Those spirits that I had invited into my life, they did not want to let go of their investment. I went through months of deliverance ministry, hours and hours of having church leaders pray over me while things manifested that I do not even want to describe. I had to verbally renounce every practice, every ritual, every pact, every invitation I had ever made. I had to destroy every tarot deck, every crystal, every book, every artifact from 25 years of practice. Some of those items I burned. Some I had to have prayed over before they would even burn. There were nights during that season when I woke up in absolute terror, feeling those familiar presences trying to pull me back. Voices telling me I had made a mistake, that Jesus was not real, that I should go back to what I knew. But every single time I called on the name of Jesus, they had to flee. That name has power that nothing I encountered in 25 years of witchcraft could even come close to matching. About 3 months after I got saved, I received a confirmation that I desperately needed. I had destroyed everything from my old life, but I was still wrestling with doubts. I was praying one night, being completely honest with God about my doubts, when I had a dream unlike any dream I had experienced in my decades of occult practice. In this dream, I was back in my old reading room, but instead of darkness, the room was filled with pure white light. And Jesus was standing there. I could not see His face clearly, the light was too bright, but I knew exactly who he was. And he picked up a tarot card from the floor, and he showed me what was really behind it. He showed me how these spirits operate, how they gather information to seem omniscient, how they study humans for years to know exactly how to deceive them, how they keep people trapped in an endless cycle of seeking but never finding, because finding would mean finding him. Then he burned that card in his hand. It just dissolved into nothing, and he spoke to me. He said, "You were never meant to seek truth from darkness. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. You searched for 25 years for what I was offering you freely the whole time. But now you're home. Now you're mine. And no one will ever snatch you out of my hand." When I woke up from that dream, I was crying tears of pure joy, because I knew everything I had been searching for my entire life, every spiritual experience I chased, every door I opened looking for meaning and purpose and power, it was all just a desperate search for him. And the enemy had spent 25 years of my life keeping me from seeing what was right in front of me the whole time. Today I share my testimony because I know there are people watching who are exactly where I was. Maybe you dabble in tarot cards and think it is just harmless fun. Maybe you are deep in witchcraft and starting to feel that something is not right, that the nightmares and the anxiety are not signs of spiritual evolution, but of spiritual bondage. Maybe you are somewhere in between, curious about the occult, but sensing a warning in your spirit. Those cards are not neutral. Those spirits are not your friends. That void inside of you, the one that keeps you searching, the one that no crystal or ritual has ever been able to fill, it was put there by God Himself. It is a homing beacon calling you back to your Creator, and nothing in this world will ever fill it except Jesus Christ. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would be sitting here sharing this testimony, that I would be a follower of Jesus, I would have laughed in your face. I was too far gone, too deep in, too experienced, too powerful to ever believe in something as simple as the gospel. But that is the beautiful thing about God. He is not intimidated by our past. He is not scared off by how deep we have gone into darkness. His light is stronger. His love is deeper. His power is greater than any spirit or demon that has ever tried to claim us. I burned my tarot cards. I burned my spell books. I renounced every spirit I ever called upon. And in exchange I received something that all of that witchcraft could never give me. I received real peace, real joy, real purpose, a relationship with the living God who knew my name before I was born, who watched over me during my darkest years, and who never stopped calling me home. If you have been involved in any kind of occult practice, I want to pray for you right now. Say this with me. Jesus, I confess that I have opened doors I should not have opened. I have sought spiritual guidance from sources other than you. I renounce every spirit I have communicated with. I renounce tarot cards and divination. I renounce witchcraft in all its forms. I ask you to forgive me and cleanse me with your blood. I invite you into my heart as my Lord and Savior. Close every door I have opened. Break every chain that binds me. Set me completely free. In Jesus' name, amen.